Okay, so time for discussion. We have yet another interesting, very profound topic, which is Phassa, meaning contact in English terms. So this comes in many teachings, many prominent teachings like dependent co-origination, paṭigha samuppada, also comes as one of seven universals, sabba adharana chittas in Abhidhamma. So let us go deeper today as much as possible, taking little time to unwrap some deeper avenues, deeper meanings of this idea. So the general meaning of phassa is touch, contact, or tactile sense. Phassa is the first of seven universals. Phassa arises together with every citta. It contacts the object so that citta can experience it. Citta is your mind. There are 6 classes of sense contacts. These are also called impressions. Visual, which is cakkhu-samphassa. So there is another word, samphassa, and I will explain the meaning, the difference, if there is any difference between phassa and samphassa. And we will see why we need to understand. And I will also present a story that will help us understand, but that comes later. So visual and hearing contact, smelling contact, tasting contact, bodily, that is tactile, and mental. So there is this twofold division that occurs in long discourses, number 15, Maha-nidana Sutta. This is Digha Nikaya, Maha-nidana Sutta. And that goes as patigha samphassa, contact by sensorial reaction, and Adhivacana Samphassa, which is verbal or conceptual or mental contact. And one is associated with the rūpakāye, the form body, and the other one is associated with the nāmakāya, the mental body. We have in this concept of nāmakāya, literally the name body, the idea of mental experience, and in rūpakāya, the physical experience, which is very hard to meditate on for many individuals because of how quickly things happen. In a millisecond, hundreds and thousands of things may have happened without us noticing because we are not wise enough. We have not cultivated that sense to understand what is actually happening in our experience. So, phassa or contact is a hybrid of mental and physical experience. So that may be somewhat easy for you to grasp. The point is the concept of contact necessarily require coherence of both name and form, nama and rupa. In other words, name and form are mutually interrelated. There would be no, so I mentioned Adhivacana Samphassa, the conceptual contact, in the form body. There were no characteristics suitable to name. So the idea is that there would be no conceptual contact. When you separate the form body and let it sit there without a mind, we need to have the characteristics to label things and the ability to label things for the form body to function. So likewise, there would be no patigha samphassa. Patigha here is resistant contact. So this is resistant contact, often associating with the body, the material experience. So there would be no patigha samphassa, resistant contact in the name body if there were no characteristics proper to form. So the coherence is now somewhat apparent in these concepts, that they both need to function together. So Adhivacana basically means all the designations, labeling, and naming things. This is often associated with the nama. But we, for our convenience, we say rūpakāye Adhivacana Samphassa because it stands within the form body. And nāmakāye patighasamphassa because in the nāmakāya conceptual body, we need the rūpakāya to interact with the form body. But in reality, it is Adhivacana, which is the conceptual body associating with the nama, and the rūpakāya associating with the patigha, the resistant. At first sight, these two may appear as totally opposed to each other, but what is implied is a case of mutual interrelation. The expression peculiar to the name body, nāmakāya, is a necessary condition for the form body, the rūpakāya, while the resistance peculiar to the form body, rūpakāya, is a necessary condition for the name body, nāmakāya. Since here we have something deep, let us go for an illustration for the sake of clarity. A verbal impression, which is conceptual, in regard to the form group, nama group, the rupa group, is there because of the constituents of the name group. So the form group is there because of the name group. Now the form group consists of the four great primaries. The form group consists of these four great primaries, which are earth, water, fire, and air. Even to distinguish between them by their qualities of hardness and softness, hotness and coolness, we need feeling, perception, intention, contact, and attention, which are the belongings of the nāmakāya, the name group, name body. So they have to play their part. We need to perceive, we need to conceptualize, for us to interact with that softness, hardness, hotness, and coolness. Thus, it is with the help of those members on the name side that the four basic elements, four primaries associated with form, receive recognition. For them to have received that recognition, for the form to receive that recognition, the naming, labeling, Adhivacana needs to function properly. So in the law of dependent or arising, we have attention and contact. So we have interest or attention or contact. We just have it as one of the 12 links of dependent origination. And you have Phassa Paṭigha Vedana. Dependent on contact, we have feelings. What are the three kinds of feelings we experience? We experience pleasant feelings, unpleasant feelings, and neutral feelings. And feelings lead to craving because when it is pleasant, we get attached. When it is unpleasant, the same attachment tells us to reject it. And when it is neutral feelings, we don't know that it is a self who is labeling it as a neutral feeling. So all three feelings are problematic according to the wisdom eye, not in ordinary lifestyle, but in wisdom eye. When you try to liberate yourself from any of these, any craving, any association of attachment to these. So not only with regard to inanimate objects, but even in the case of this conscious body, the question of contact is related to the fact of attention. We are giving contact means we are giving attention. If, for instance, I ask what I am touching now, one might say that I am touching this mouse that I'm touching in my hand. This is because we usually associate the idea of touching with the hand that holds. But suppose I put away the mouse and ask again what I am touching now, you might find it difficult to answer. It might not be possible for another to guess by mere external observation, since it is essentially subjective. It is individually different. It is dependent on my attention. It could even be my robe that I am touching in the sense of contact, in which case I am becoming conscious of my body as separate from the robe I am wearing. Consciousness follows in the wake of attention. We become conscious on what we see, what we hear, what we smell, what we taste, what we physically touch, and what we mentally perceive. Whatever my attention picks up, of that I am conscious. So it is conditioned, it is this consciousness, vijnana, is conditioned and it arises because of conditions. When conditions disappear, the ability to be conscious on something also disappears. It ceases, which is a very profound experience one can have and is an enlightening experience. Though I have in front of me so many apparently visible objects, until my attention is focused, eye consciousness does not come about. The basic function of this type of consciousness, then, is to distinguish between the eye and the object that is seen. It is only after the eye has become conscious that other factors necessary for sense perception fall into place. There are two things born of that basic analysis, together with the consciousness itself, that is, eye consciousness, make up the concept of contact. So this is when we find in Madhupindika Sutta or in different sutras, cakkhu patigha, dependent on cakkhu, rūpakāye, dependent on form, the external object that you see. Uppajjati, arises, cakkhu viññāna, eye consciousness. Tinnan sangati passo, the union of or coming together of these three is passo, contact. Let us now consider how Paṭigha Samphassa, resistance contact, comes about. It is said that the factors of the form group, the rūpakāye, have a part to play in producing resistance contact. On the name group, nāmakāya, we sometimes speak of an idea striking us as if it were something material. It is not really striking as striking on a physical something. Or else an idea could be at the back of our mind and a word on the tip of our tongue. The clearest manifestation of contact is that between material objects where collision is suggestive of resistance, as implied by the word patigha. So patigha, somewhat resistance in there. This primary sense of striking against or striking together is implicit even in the simile given by the Buddha in the Adhivacana Sutta, the Majjhima Nikāya, and in the Phassa Sutta of the Samyutta Nikāya, concerning two sticks being rubbed together to kindle a fire. This is the name and form rubbing together to kindle a fire of experience. Though as a gross manifestation, contact is primarily associated with the form kaya, form body, it is essentially connected with the nāmakāya, name body, as we have already explained in this fire making example, like two sticks coming together. This is a great illustration to understand that the experience manifests with the two coming into contact together. It is when Paṭigha Samphassa, the resistance contact, and Adhivacana Samphassa, conceptual contact, come together that contact arises, dependent on name and form, nama and rūpa. So that is why we call it nama rūpa paccaya passo, dependent on nama rūpa, name and form, there is contact. So let that sink in for a moment. So let me now differentiate between, as I read in different places, between Phassa and Samphassa. So they say, I'm not completely confident on this, so we will let it like be a question of investigation for all of us. That, they say Phassa has pure state, Samphassa has habits associated with it. And oftentimes a question comes like how an arahant, an enlightened being, experiences the world, whether they have. Now, I mentioned that habits are associated with what? Samphassa. So then you can think that maybe arahants don't have samphassa. Arahants have just contact, phassa. Okay, so for us to understand the significance of sang here, sang has, now you have heard the word samuppada in patigha samuppada. So many people translate it accurately as dependent sang uppada. Dependent is paticca, sang uppada is co-arising, arising together, because nothing arises on its own here, and many things support for its birth. Sang uppada seems to be the most accurate. Co-arising, like co-arising seems to be the most accurate translation of it. Then we have Sanyutta Nikaya. So sang and con in, or co in English, like connected, like this co-sense seems to be connecting together. Like connected discourses of the Buddha is Sanyutta discourses. So sang there also seems to be like that connected sense. And if we have two words like samvadati and vivadati. And if you see samvadati, that means you are engaging in a conversation. Vivadati means something like debating. So that we seems to be the opposite of sang here, at least in this context. We, if you just add, so we have vadati and samvadati and vivadati. Sangvadati is engaging in conversation, and the opposite comes with that little addition of we in front of vadati, means debating. So the opposite of, if we say paticca vyupada, which is they arise separately. If we say, instead of saying Sanyutta Nikaya, we will say Viyutta Nikaya, which is like disconnected discourses of the Buddha. So that's interesting. And there is also a preposition that is per, like pamodati, that is equal to this sang here. And so you can say pamodati and sammodati are similar. So pamodati means rejoicing, and sammodati also means rejoicing, delighting in something. You can say paticca paupada, like paticca samuppada, and the meaning won't be affected, but I have never heard anybody saying it that way. So let us talk about Phassa and Samphassa in an example. This one clearly shows how the transition from Phassa to Samphassa. So Now take samphassa as associated with our habitual storytelling of the experience, phassa as the pure form that a pure being experiences, without adding the self or the story from the past. So and a pure being can maintain, an arahant can maintain this state without associating a personal story with it. That requires wisdom and skill and an intense, mindful activity in your mind. So now phassa is, I'm here presenting it as the pure contact, and samphassa is the contact that has other things attached to it, a story attached to it. And so many years ago in Sri Lanka, this is the story. A mother had gone overseas when her son was less than a year old, very little. She had been overseas for many years, and when she came back to meet her son, apparently she had not even seen any pictures of her son. So this boy is a teenager now. When she gets home, she's told that the boy is visiting a neighbor, and she starts walking towards that neighbor's house. On the way, the son is texting in the cell phone, and the mother is texting also, like they get distracted and they bump into each other. The teenager apologizes as if he happened to strike a stranger, and they both resume walking. They don't recognize it. But then another person on the street says, "Don't you recognize your son?" "Well, how can you? Like, you have been away all this time." Hearing that, she says, "Oh, is that my son?" And immediately runs back and hugs him. So she clearly saw the boy when he bumped into her and apologized. This happened. But at that time, he was just a teenager, just another teenager to her. That seeing event involved just contact. But when somebody pointed out that it was her son, the whole perception of the boy took a big leap, big, deep jump in an instant. Now she looks at the same boy with a whole new set of mental baggage. Now it is not just a teenager, it is her son. There is attachment involved. Now, when she looks at him, it is samphassa that is involved. So now you can say arahants don't have samphassa in that analogy. Now we can also see how samphassa leads to an intensified feeling, vedana. This is called sampassaja vedana. Vedana arising due to samphassa. This mother had neutral thoughts, maybe even some annoyance, when the boy who bumped into her apologized. She had annoyance. If she was an arahant, she wouldn't have an annoyance. She would not even have ignorance towards that experience. When somebody bumps into you, it is just a contact. Like Bahia story comes, but I will not bring it now. There's more to say here. And she apologized, and he apologized, and they moved on. But when she learned that it was her son, her feeling turned instantly into joy. Take a bit more further, if that teenager then got hit by a car in an unfortunate accident, that joy would turn instantly into sorrow. all these different types of feelings arise based on the type and level of attachment to a given object, right? The object here is the boy. So that way, if we are talking about worldly beings, when it says Phassa, it might then mean Samphassa, because worldly beings have Samphassa, like many stories stringed, attached to that experience. If it is just a pure state, contact arises and there's no craving, the thread of craving attached. So that is what I have to offer. Any questions? Or how do you understand this? Can you even
Bante, what I have understood is that you are said you,
can you speak up louder, please?
Bante, what I have understood is that it's like you explained it right. So what I have heard from one other sermon is that Arahant and the Buddha doesn't get sampasa, and all other people uh, behind it, like ordinary our people or the other person who didn't attain the Arahanthood, get sampasa because their pasa gets contaminated
Yeah,
with moha, and then make a story, then leads to sampasa javeda and all that stuff. That's what I have heard.
right. So also in Chatakka Sutta, which is Majjhima Nikaya, in I think it's in Majjhima Nikaya. I forgot like what number it is. It's Chatakka Sutta, six sets of six. They use the word Samphassa. I think to imply, I'm not completely sure, to imply that it is the contaminated experience. Uncontaminated experience, then is the Arahants and Buddha's experience. Do you agree with that?
Yes, Bante, 100%. That's what I have heard.
Yeah,
Yeah. So it gets contaminated with Lobha, Dvesha, Moha, then we make a story out of it afterward. Then Buddha and Arahants doesn't get that Lobha, Dvesha, Moha, so it's not contaminated. So they
right.
don't make a story.
I think that is important that you mentioned the story part,
Mhm.
because I mentioned in the guided meditation today that we run into past, we run into future, which we oftentimes do because we have lived in the past. We also project things about the future. And then the Buddha says, Atitang nanu sochanti. Do not regret about the past. Nappa japanti. Also don't worry about nagatang, what is yet to come. Paccupannena yapenti. You depend on what is happening now. You stay aware of what is happening now. Tena vanno pasidati. By that, your complexion becomes serene because anxiety reduces. And depression also has no way to arise because you stay aware of the present. But now this is completely dependent on an arahant's lifestyle or someone who is close to that state. And if you chose to do, if you are a person who's doing 9 to 5 job and think this way, it's hard because you have to think about what you are supposed to do tomorrow. You also have to worry about the work you did yesterday. And this is this cumulative experience, like you continue your work. So that's a different lifestyle. But an arahant has chosen a different, completely like a peaceful lifestyle where you have the freedom to stay aware of what is arising now and what is ceasing now. And Arahant's life is not like 9 to 5 job. This is why now I can bring Bahia into the story, that in the teachings given to Bahia, yato tvang Bahia ditte dittamattang bhavisati. When what is seen is only seen, sute sutamattang bhavisati. When what is heard is only heard, mute mutamattam bhavisati. When what is felt is just what is felt, then you don't exist there. Na tatta. There's no way a person involving the past or future can manifest. It is just, what is it? Like, it's just maybe being. And that is what made him an enlightened person. For him to see that, I would think that he had that understanding about the subjective experience and the objective experience. Objects merely exist and we associate a subject with it. And there we experience all the problems because we bring a subject. Does that make any sense?
Yes, Bhante.
Any more people wanting to jump in? I like to hear. Even if it is confusion, please share because we like to know.
Bhante, in one point, the Phassa, that means the contact,
Yeah.
it has one side is, it has two sides, just like you said, the the Adhivacana Samphassa, that's
Mm-hmm.
because of the objects, the naming the objects, and the
Yeah.
patigha Samphassa, that is because of the na, those, the mind, the the contact with the mind objects.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, those are the two sides of the same contact. The contact, if we think, if it is a square, it has not a square, I mean maybe a stick, it has two sides of the stick. One side is the because of the contact, the naming the objects and the other form, and the other side is the contact of the
It's like two sides of a coin, right? They both exist. When we say one side exists, the other side definitely exists.
yeah.
But yeah.
And then I saw an example saying that there are two people, just like the same example. Two people are just walking, one walking to the opposite side, the other one. Then the one was kind of not in the sense of mind, and then he hit the man, and then that other man said, "Why you hit on me?" And then he found out that he hit on the man, and until that time he didn't even sense it. So
Mm.
then, and then that man said, "No, you are the one who hit on me." And then those two contacts, one is, the first one had the patigha Samphassa, that is because of the contacting on,
Mm-hmm.
no, Adhivacana Samphassa, that is because of the contacting on the forms. The other one has the patigha Samphassa, that's because of the hitting on his mind.
Mm.
I don't know whether I am saying the right or wrong.
Well, I think that is a great example. Like sometimes you hit somebody and there's no associate any labeling, and it is mere contact. It's like when somebody gave a big blow on Venerable Sariputta's head, and it was like he didn't go into that. Like it was just contact for him, which is very hard for us, right? When somebody gives a big blow on our head, we feel it. So you need you need to be in a completely enlightened state of mind to not blame the person, not hate the person, not react. So, and I like to also bring the idea of we experiencing a celebrity that we have craving towards, and that celebrity we first saw and we have a mental image, and when we see it next time, we associate that mental image all the time, as if we don't even now have to experience that outer person externally, because we have possessed our own experience and we can dwell in it even without having that person in front of us or seeing on the TV. Even if we see that person on the TV, we go into our mental image and it strengthens our attachment towards it. Unless we take an antidote to, a way to cut it off and close our eyes and undo that relationship with them.
So that
So we are dwelling in the mind all the time.
that
Yeah.
means we are making papanchas, like
Right.
proliferating and all those
And
things.
that's a word in the question, chat box here. Does samphassa lead to proliferation? Apparently it does, but just phassa does not lead to proliferation. So exactly. So, but I think the idea is like phassa does not lead to proliferation. Is only a thing that arahants, arahants do have phassa. Take Buddha for example. He once said, "Pitting me agilayati, my back is aching." Can Sariputta give this talk, like remainder of this talk, and the Buddha goes to resting? Now this is clearly showing that the Buddha uses the what is the word, like just sammuti words, the conventional language to say my back my back is aching. And for me, hearing that, I would say, oh, the Buddha has labeled his back as my back, and that he has proliferations. But in fact, he has seen what is behind this experience way before, and he now sees it. Even now, he can see it. It is not actually his back, but for conventional reality, you need to say, it is my back. Otherwise, you can't communicate, as a Buddha with your disciples, with your students. So this brings our attention to Samphassa then. Only if we want to say Samphassa is not experienced by Buddhas, then we can say that uh, Samphassa belongs to those who associate a strong reaction to, which is a proliferation, papancha, that experience. Instead of like wrestling with that experience, the Buddha decided, okay, somebody else take over, and I'm going to take some rest. And 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 he also, like, sometimes when he had health issues, he would take medicine from the royal physician named Jivaka. Why is that? That he just wanted things to like be at ease in physical body. And does it mean he had proliferations? He did not, because he had seen the roots of all these in his enlightening experience he had when he was 35. And ever since, he only know that all these experiences are coming down to just mere contact. There's no need to label it as my, mine, or I make it. And this is where he's distinguished from ordinary beings. Where ordinary beings will suffer. This is why we say like pain is inevitable, suffering is optional. And in this case, the option for the Buddha is not to suffer. And he has given that option to us. But we still want to suffer. We have an attachment towards suffering. So we continue being attached to these experiences. We think that the human existence, or where we came from in the past, or where we are headed in the future, we can handle it. When in fact, people like, super, uh, maybe enlightened beings like Buddhas can see that it is an ocean of flood of, they named it as kama yoga, flood of sensuality, and ditti yoga, flood of views, bhava yoga. We exist in a flood of existences, not just human existence, in different like spirit existence, Brahma existence, divine existence, different existences. This is a flood. So these existences, kama, ditti, bhava, avijja, the flood of ignorance, we are washed away in that flood of um, ignorance also. Now you see that recently in the news, like yesterday, there was this Himalayan avalanche. This huge glacier came down and flooded and killed many people. And that kind of flash, nobody was prepared. People were working in hydraulic plantations, and nobody was prepared for this. Just as us, we are not prepared for these floods, and we continue being flooded, getting carried away with the flood endlessly. And Buddhas show it to us, and we ignore it. Oblivious, we are just, okay, thank you, Buddha, and we just continue on living our life, ignoring these truths. That's why we have ignorance until we become arahants. Anyway, so many things to talk about. Any more thoughts, questions? I mentioned consciousness also has conditioned, arises based on conditions, and that's connecting with the discussion Bhante Sankicha did last week on consciousness. That all this is consciousness, being conscious is a conditioned experience. And when you go to a deeper level of meditation, where you see profound equanimity, when there's no conditioning for, when there's no perception, feeling, and any formation, how can consciousness arise? There's nothing to be conscious on. And there, consciousness experiences ending, cessation, things cease to exist. And you can't know that it happened while being in that experience, because we have life form ceases and come back, and you need now language to explain you what really happened, what really an enlightened being would show us. And if that experience is like seeing the Dhamma right there, things existed and now they no longer exist, but you don't see it there because there's no you in that experience to see. Isn't that amazing? That that kind of teaching even exists in the world for us to explore. And it says that it is the highest happiness. It starts with talking about suffering, but then it gives us the highest happiness, that it frees us completely from wandering here and there in the samsara. Anyway, so it's 9:16 already. It's night, and maybe you are waiting for other things you need to do. So shall we end here? Okay, we will end. Akasattha ca bhummattha devānāgā mahiddhikā puññantang anumoditva chiran rakkhantu sāsanang chiran rakkhantu desanang chiran rakkhantu tvang sada. May all beings rejoice in our good karma and find freedom, liberation in being free from suffering. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
Thank you, Bhante.
Thank you, Bante.
Thank you, Bante.
Thank you, Bhante.
Thank you. Teruvan Sarnai, sir. Teruvan Sarnai, sir.
Everyone say amen.
Thank you, Bhante.
Teruvan Sarnai Swaminathan, sir.
Everyone say